Okay, we've got a questionnaire set up in queXS now that links to our Lime survey test questionnaire, test survey I should say. Um, Before we get started with, I guess, the procedure that you'll do regularly with surveys in queXS, the more one-time operation you would do or irregular operation you do is adding telephone interviewers. So let's run through that. So that's under operators. Um, we'll just have a look at our current operators, which is under operator management. We've got our default administrative user. Now, here is where you could change the password if you wanted to change the password and the email address for the administrative user or the time zone. This is the function that gives them super administrative privileges. So in queXS, you're either a super administrator or you're an interviewer. So let's go ahead and add a test operator. So to do this, I'm just going to call you operator1. This is the login username. And I'm just going to, for simplicity, I'm going to keep the password the same now. You can generate a nice strong password if you like, but for testing, I'm just going to use this. And you have to provide a first name and last name. You can provide an email address if you like. It's not required, but you do have to specify a time zone of where your operator is situated because they mightn't be in the same time zone as your respondents, for example. Okay, so I'm going to enable this, add this operator, and they have now been added as a regular telephone interviewer, so they won't have access to this back end. They'll only be able to have access to what we call the operator panel here. And the operator is now listed under operator management here. What happens by default is, although operators have can either be a super user or a regular telephone interviewer, they also have what we call skills in queXS. And I'll just explain a little bit about what skills are. Skills relate to how the scheduler, that call scheduler, will assign cases to interviewers. By default, operators have the ability to call what we call a temporary outcome or a normal case, and also appointments. A temporary outcome is one where the case is either fresh, in other words, it's never been called, or it has been called, but its status is still temporary. In other words, the previous call was a no answer, the person didn't answer, or there was some technical problem calling the number. So these are the skills that you'd typically associate with a regular telephone interviewer, that they can call new numbers and numbers that have been called, but they're still in a state where they haven't spoken to somebody, or where an interviewer has been, a respondent has been called and an appointment has been made. You can also assign these other special skills to particular telephone interviewers for more advanced usage. So for example, if one of your telephone interviewers is particularly skilled or experienced, you might want to classify them as a supervisor. And a supervisor would mean that the telephone interviewer might have a difficult case and they don't know how to deal with that particular case on the phone, or when they spoke to someone, they might have said, they might have requested that they're being called back by the team supervisor. If the interviewer has the skill of a supervisor assigned to them, that means they will receive those numbers to call. The other special skill is a refusal outcome. So in some cases, you might train your telephone interviewers to be what are known as refusal converters. In other words, they call back people who have previously refused to participate and try and get them to participate. So if you apply that skill to the operator, they'll have access to those cases that have been refused. And then a final outcome skill would be if you needed to call back completed cases. And in some cases, you need to do this for validation purposes. And so you might assign an operator to do that. But typically, you'd only want these temporary and appointment outcomes, and they're the default when you create an operator.